Hello guys, welcome to my podcast Thinking It Out. I'm Ausra and today is my episode number 29 and I will talk about performance practice and how should we follow it or not, and how important it is, in our organ playing. And I think this is a topic that often starts an important discussion and everybody has its own opinion about it, and people argue with themselves and we don't agree, and I think there are basically the truth lying somewhere in the middle between these purists or practicalists, so called. And what I'm thinking about this topic is very important for me actually, and I want to lay out for you the experience in my life as an organist, how I discovered historical performance practice and what became out of it. So at the beginning, actually, I started to play organ quite late. I was almost 18 years old when I applied and was accepted to Lithuanian Academy of Music to an organ program, and that's where it began. Well, when we are talking about historical performance practice, most often we think about Baroque music, because I think the Baroque music really takes a significant part of any organist's repertoire, because probably of a Bach, and his predecessors and his circle. So I cannot imagine organists without playing any of Bach's music. So at the Lithuanian Academy of Music, basically all our experience of historical performance practice was that we had sort of one organ where we had to play our juries and exams and concerts. It had only 12 stops. Schucker's organ from Potsdam, from the East Germany, and really quite a good instrument for practice, but really not sufficient enough for any young organist to understand the significance of historical performance practice. So because we played everything on it, from, let's say, trio sonatas by J.S. Bach to the Franck's great chorales and Messiaen. So just imagine for yourself how we had to register on this organ, which has only 12 stops and was really quite sharp intonated, and had, as I said, only 12 stops, 2 manuals and pedals, and 3 couplers. So not a good choice for, let's say, the slow movements of a Messiaen or all that kind of stuff. And it was loud and a little bit screamy, and really when playing, for example, Bach trio sonatas, you just feel like your body is transparent and everybody can see right throughout you. And it was really a very bad feeling. It gave us a lot of stress and quite an unpleasant experience. No acoustics, of course. But actually it taught a lot for us, because I think all other instruments after that one seemed much better in that way, that it was easier to play all the other instruments. And besides that, our concert hall organ, we had like 4 practice instruments. One was the Alain digital organ, and we had 3 others, which were also really small and insignificant instruments, good for learning, text, really learning text, but not telling you much about the registration or organ stops, or the different organ schools, let's say North German, Central German, or Italian, Spanish. I'm not talking already about French classical or French symphonic. basically we could imagine about all that, historical performance practice only, from what our teachers could tell us. And we tried to tell something, but I don't think we comprehended it themselves so well that, to demonstrate it on such a pure instruments. And basically, I think that we were taught some principles about Baroque articulation, but not in that way, as it should be. So when we actually, Vidas and I, graduated with our master's degree in organ performance, we went to summer organ academy to Sweden, Göteborg. And that year we had this inauguration of very famous instrument. This was modeled after Arpschnitger, this organ from Hamburg, St. Jacobus Church. We placed it in the Örgryte new church in Gothenburg, and we had really wonderful summer academy. Basically, this was the first time when I really encountered the North German music played on replica of a North German instrument, and it made all the difference. Actually, when I heard how it sounded for the first time, although acoustics was really dead in that Örgryte church, I thought that, I am dead, I was dead, and that I am in paradise, because that's how I imagined the music in heaven sounds. So, okay, I'll now take a sip of water and continue our discussion about historical performance practice. So, good water, really refreshing from our beautiful mug. And now I will continue talking about historical performance practice. So in Göteborg we tried, that big organ designed after, Arpschnitger, and there was also some smaller instruments like Manderscheid's positive, like beautiful pedal clavichord, which was a new discovery for us both, and other historical instruments, and it was so shocking, basically shocking experience. And we realized that after studying for 6 years at the Lithuanian Academy of Music, we haven't learned anything about historical performance practice. And at this academy we met Dr. Pamela Ruiter-Feenstra, and we went to study with her to the United States, to Eastern Michigan University, where we got our second master's degree. And here in Michigan we had opportunity to practice on Pamela's pedal clavichord and on her beautiful harpsichord built in Tuscany style. Well, we had also sort of American symphonic instrument in a huge recital hall, which we could, use and practice to spend as much time as we could and as we wanted. This was really wonderful. Plus, the neighborhood was surrounded by beautiful instruments. We could go to various churches and experience, different organs. And, Pamela taught us really a lot. And I think that studying with her for 2 years, we became some sort of purists. And for that time, I thought that that's it. I will be playing only on historical oriented instrument, only the music suited for those instruments, and that's it. Later we went to Lincoln, Nebraska to study, to get our doctoral degrees, and we studied with George Ritchie and Quentin Faulkner, and we were not as purist as Pamela was, but still, actually it was really interesting, because we were older than Pamela was, and we had to relearn themselves, to taught themselves, how really to articulate the Baroque music, Bach's music, because as a young performance, we were also taught not in that historical performance practice way. So I believe it was really challenging for them, but we both did a wonderful job reorienting themselves. And like George Ritchie recorded entire organ music by J.S. Bach on the various organs in the United States, who were built, in sort of Baroque style, Bach style. So it's a really wonderful collection of J.S. Bach's recordings. So we continued that purist tradition, but already with some freedom. And actually, when we went back to Lithuania, to Vilnius, then it's how our real career started, and how the real sort of understanding about historical performance practice really started in a real life. So what became of us now? I think that I am not longer a purist. Imagine, that you are working at the university, you are playing like lots of graduation ceremonies and all that kind of, honored ceremonies, and you need all this festive music, and people sort of ask for you for different music to be performed, and nobody really wants your Bach fugues or significant works, and nobody cares about your articulation, and is that music really suited for that instrument or not. And we actually fell down so deep that we even performed Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, on our tracker organ at St. John's University Church. So how much more down can we fall? I don't know, but it does not mean that I sort of forgot how to play the Baroque music or French symphonic music. It's just that every time I need to adjust and sort of to find a good balance between what I believe as a purist and about those requirements that people expect from me to play and to entertain them. So between pure music, pure organ music, and that entertainment repertoire. So I think the important thing is that you would really include some of those sort of maybe non-organist pieces in your repertoire in probably each recital. Not when you are playing on the historically oriented organ, but when you are playing on the modern organ, on a universal organ, where you can play mainly anything. Well, nothing really will sound good on those instruments, but nothing will sound really bad on those instruments. So you can let yourself to play all kind of music on them. So that way you will be sort of keeping your promise to yourself, to be an organist that maintains a high level standard, but also at the same time you will please your audience and you will keep your job. And I am really fascinated by performance such as, for example, Léon Berben, who basically plays only historical repertoire, and most of the time on only historical instruments. But the thing about people who are such an excellent performance, that even when we get an instrument which is not historically based instrument, we can make their music sound almost as good as if it would be played on the historical instrument. So I think, the great mastery is, and the great secret is, to make the best out of any situation and of any given organ. Of course, you need to select your repertoire appropriately, but don't stop yourself, and don't make a walls for yourself. Don't create a problems for yourself, basically. Just take it easy and try to be flexible, and try to please yourself, and at the same time think about your audience, about your public, because they are important too. Well, because if you, let's say, are going to some kind of village church, and where people don't have like really comprehensive musical education as you do, don't expect that, if you play only Bach's preludes and fugues, that everybody will be happy. No, we won't be happy. So you need to educate your audience. So try to make your repertoire serious, but also entertaining at the same time. So play maybe one serious piece and then some lighter piece for your audience, because you cannot be performer only for yourself. Your audience is also really important, because without them, without public, without audience, we are also nothing. So this is, I think, a good compromise, and my advice would be, always think not only about yourself, but about your audience, and of course about a given instrument. So I hope this podcast was useful for you, and it raised for you some thoughts, on this topic that I was covering today. And I'm looking for your feedback, for your questions, and for your remarks about what you think about historical performance practice, how important it is in your life, and how do you manage to balance between authenticity of an performance practice and the reality. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week on my next episode. Bye bye.